And one colleague is wondering if you have any tips for integrating innovation in daily work. Is there anything that organizations can do to encourage employees to innovate in their daily work?
That's a tough question. I think that's the question of the day, and everyone is trying to answer that question, not just international organizations, private sector, NGOs, startups. I think this is a broad question today. How do you integrate innovation? There's been different ways to try this. I think Young UN tried the innovation time, where you were allocated specific time to try innovation. Other people, work on different tools. I think a great way is to really try to show people in your teams that there are different tools for innovation. I noticed another question asking tools. I mean, human-centered design is an excellent approach. There are different other tools to address innovation. And I think just these trainings, allowing people to go through certain innovation trainings, will enable them to start thinking about their everyday work a little bit differently, will enable them to start experimenting and thinking in a way that perhaps they were not thinking before. Perhaps even just meeting with counterparts in different organizations that they're interested in how those people work will also enable them through webinars like this to really broaden the scope and understand to a greater extent, how can I change my work? How can I improve my efficiency, my effectiveness, and perhaps my mission, address my mission in a better way?
Yeah, maybe if Adriana is still with us, maybe she can give us an answer to this, because I think ITC has been experimenting quite a lot with this, and obviously being to a large extent a volunteer-based platform, I think you have thought a lot about these issues. Adriana, you're still with us and you want to share? Okay, apparently not. But yeah, I think that they're both approaches, as Katja already said. Well, one is kind of the how do you have like bottom-up approaches to do this. There are also kind of top-down approaches, like for example, related to the Young UN movement, but also the United Nations office at Geneva is currently experimenting with what they call new work, for example. So they're looking at kind of new ways of working, different mechanisms from agile teams to kind of open workspaces, whatever, and see how this can actually change the way people work together and also allow them to be more innovative. So I think that there's, again, both approaches, the bottom-up, where every single individual can think about how can I integrate this into my daily life, to really kind of more top-down driven approach where we can change the broad structures of our work all the way to the work contracts where we're bound to.
Lovely, and a lovely segue to the next question, also from a UNDP colleague, this time in Lebanon. And he's specifically wanting to hear your thoughts on KPIs, so formal mechanisms for incorporating innovation in, I think he's referring mainly to management in their work plans. Have you seen KPIs as part of the work plans, work contracts of any UN entities? KPIs specific to innovation, that is.
I think this has been a topic of conversation for about 2 or 3 years now that's come up in many of our workshops. We have not specifically seen any KPIs related to innovation. I think some organizations are starting to introduce trainings for innovation. I think the IMF is probably the best example of people who are of an organization moving towards that direction. But no, I cannot answer that question.
Yeah, I also believe this is truly complicated to do this. If we try to follow a little bit what the private sector is doing in this area, I think the first step there is always kind of to give incentives or build KPIs around knowledge sharing. So like move towards like a 360 type of assessment and see also kind of how is this person collaborating upwards and across, which is not directly measuring innovation, but it's like a small indicator towards innovation. But no, I have not kind of seen this realized in any organizations, which does not mean that it doesn't exist, because this has not been our specific focus. But we've heard quite a lot of conversations on how we could potentially do this better.